What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Wisconsin Sportsman podcast, which is brought to you by Lone Wolf Custom Gear. I'm your host, Pearson Ellis, and this is your home for all things hunting, fishing, and conservation in the Badger State. Folks, I hope you're all doing well. I hope the start to summer has been good. I hope the turkey season hangovers are starting to fade a little bit. And we're rounding the corner here into everyone's favorite time of year where we get to dive into some summer deer chores. No, we're not doing that. Thank God. We're going to postpone on that. I've got my man, Tony Peterson, on the line. We're going to be talking some Mississippi smallmouth tactics. Tony, how are we doing today?
Good, man. It's almost time to start doing some deer work, but not quite.
We're getting there. We're getting there. Yeah, I will put those off as long as I can. And one of the nice things too about what we were just talking off air, like focusing on public land, is most of the chores are already done from the past couple of months of scouting and turkey hunting and filling in all the gaps and everything from last season and everything. So until, I don't know, when do you normally throw cameras out?
I'm going to throw them out pretty early this year because I'm working on a bunch of new stuff. But by mid-July,
Sure.
generally.
Yeah.
I mean, I love. I think it's just cool how it works out where turkey season kind of fades away, and then you have the best fishing of the year for like 5-6 weeks, and then when that starts to fade away and the recreational boaters are out and all that stuff, then it's like, okay, now I can start thinking about deer again.
Yep.
And it's just we get this nice little reprieve here right now to go fishing.
Yeah, absolutely, dude. And you're right. It's one of those overlooked things where I think everybody starts thinking, oh, well, I've got the whole summer to get the boat out and, do some fishing and get the kids everything. Everyone's tired from the end of school and all that. But yeah, like right now is one of my favorite times to be targeting specifically smallmouth. We had an awesome trout season so far down in the Driftless in this past spring with lots of rain, lots of chunky, like well-fed fish with all the worms and leeches and bait fish getting flushed around and everything in that high water. It has been delightful. But aside from a couple goofy little outings on some of our lesser known, like warm water smallmouth creeks that we've got down in the Driftless, I haven't really done any smallie fishing. Now, the one smallie outing I did have was pretty solid. Actually ended up picking up like a really nice brown trout that was bigger than any of the smallmouth I caught. But aside from that, this is the best time of year. All these fish are starting to come off of beds and move around into their kind of post-spawn, early summer haunts and everything. And one of the bodies of water that we're fortunate to have in the Midwest is obviously the Mississippi River that borders the western half of Wisconsin, eastern half of Minnesota, Iowa, all the way on down to the Gulf. And I don't know about you. I haven't spent a whole lot of time fishing the Mississippi. I've hunted it several times, but I haven't actually gotten a line wet. But I know that's something that you like to do this time of year. So I guess when it comes to, I don't even know where to begin this, honestly. It's a big river. Like, what has your Mississippi River smallmouth fishing looked like so far this year? Let's start there.
So I want to talk about that. Can we back up a second though?
Absolutely.
So you brought up something that I think is so interesting. Where I grew up in southeastern Minnesota. So it was spring-fed trout streams and then those interior smallmouth rivers that you could wet wade where, an 18, 19-inch fish is a really good one, right?
Yep.
When you said that you caught a big brown trout in one of those smallie streams, I think people really don't understand when the water temperature is low enough in the spring, those smallie rivers are trout streams.
Yep.
And they have a way bigger, better forage base. And so if you want to catch a giant trout, that's the move.
Yeah.
And it's like, and it's crazy because I mean, that used to be, I used to do that a lot. Like the first articles I ever wrote for Outdoor News and In Fish were about that kind of thing. But it's crazy that even in the summer where you'll have, the water temps in that smallie stream might be in the 70s or whatever, maybe higher, I don't know. And then you'll have one trout stream feed in there. And for like 50 or 100 yards of that smallmouth river, you might have all of the biggest trout that are in that stream back out there in the evenings. And it can be like an unbelievable opportunity.
Yep.
And it's like one of those things that you just have to sort of work on a little bit and try to figure it out. But when you do, it's like sort of a worldview changer. You're like,
Totally.
oh, this is a Smalley stream. It's
Yep.
July. Like I'm not going to catch a trout in here. It's like, yeah, there might only be a small stretch where on one half of that river, there's a bunch of big brownies backed up in there, but it
Mhm.
can be such a cool opportunity. And I think stuff like that is just, I think there's like echoes of that through everything that we do. And I think that figuring that stuff out is so cool.
Totally. Like the overlaps, you mean? Like in sort
Yeah,
of like
just, I mean,
habitat or
that, I mean, the mixing of those species that really
Mhm.
shouldn't be mixing a whole
Right.
lot,
Totally.
just like sort of just like figuring out something that's different from what most people would think of because they think they know. And then
Mhm.
you go out there. And I mean, that's the thing that I think holds people back. We were talking about deer off air here. Almost everything that we do, what we think we know is like what's going to hold us back. Like
Yep.
what we think we know about calling deer or calling turkeys or this weather or that weather, that stuff holds us back. And fishing is like a lower stakes deal generally,
Mhm.
and you can figure a lot of stuff out that way that sort of challenges your worldview. It's a little harder to do hunting. Like you kind of have to like facilitate it. But
Right.
if you go into the woods thinking that like I might be wrong or I'm going to learn something or I'm just going to try this stupid thing just to see, I think that's like the key to woodsmanship.
Yeah, definitely, dude. Not to mention those big browns that hang out in that weird overlap water are wired so completely differently than any little 8-inch or 12-inch fish that's way up in those headwater streams that slashes at grasshoppers and, beetles or whatever and like just, throws his whole body out of the water trying to eat something. Like these are predatory, pissed off, like stealthy browns that, they eat to kill basically. They're not
Right.
eating to play with their food. Like
Right.
you're
And
dealing
they
with a
eat big
serious
stuff.
fish.
I mean,
Yeah,
they're eating
exactly.
suckers and chubs. And
Yep.
I mean, when I was in high school, we used to go fish like the Root River, certain branches of the Root River when it was cold early. And I mean, we were throwing stuff that you would throw for pike up north.
Yep.
And you just think like you're selecting out the 12 inchers for sure. But what like an 18 to 30-inch trout can eat is
Yep.
a lot. And it's so fun.
Yeah, definitely, dude. I mean, yeah, the one that I got was 18 and he ate like a 4-inch Ned fly that I tied like literally just a Ned rig hook with, fly body on it, like the streamer thing just imitated cray. And dude, he hit that harder and folded a 7-weight rod like pretty
Right.
much in half just out of anger because it just happened to be there. And I literally
Right.
picked up a smallmouth and, 3 seconds prior to that or 3 casts before that. And just happened to be in the right spot. And he was like, "Yep, I'll kill it. Why not? Sure." And yeah, dude, did you hear about there's a study the Wisconsin DNR is doing this year for the first time focused on big trout, like those 18 plus inch fish, where they're trying to shock them, or they did shock them way down in these lower stretches of a system because they want to see what they actually do throughout the course of a year. And so they shocked one. I just recorded an episode with a guy who catches a pile of just a pile of mega trout and kind of focusing on types of water we're talking about right now.
Right.
But he was talking to the biologist who was running that study. They shocked one of these. I think he said it was a 21-inch brown. And the next day, when they pinged the little location tag on it, that sucker had traveled 9 miles upstream. And like, so I don't know, talking about the things that we know or we don't know, or the things that we think we know. Like, I don't
Right.
think anybody would expect just a whatever regular. I mean, not regular. It's obviously an outlier in the size category, but I don't think anybody would expect a driftless trout to shoot upstream nine
Right.
miles in a day. Like, that's
I
crazy. And like,
I think we don't know anything about that stuff.
yep.
I mean, I'm going to butcher this story because I'm going to misremember it, but I think it was last year a spring tournament on the Mississippi, probably in La Crosse area or one of those pools down there.
Mhm.
There was a guy in a tournament who caught a giant smallie, and it had like distinct spots or something on it. But we're talking like 7 plus, like giant. And I think it was on a wing dam. It was staged up pre-spawn, and somebody had caught that in a tournament the year before. So they had pictures of it. They had weighed it. And then the weigh-in site, like how far it had traveled and to be back there in the same spot, and you see that and you go,
Hmm.
we don't, you haul a giant female smallie off a wing dam, take her upstream 10 miles, weigh her in through the lock system, whatever.
Yep.
And then that sucker finds its way back.
Yeah.
How? Like
Right.
how you couldn't, if my daughters are 14 and a half, if you took them and dropped them off 10 miles from my house where we've lived their whole life, they would never get home. Like never. It'd be it. They just live there.
Yep. Right.
And
Right.
those fish can do that. I think that I think we don't know anything about what they're capable of and what their actual day-to-day life is.
Hmm. Oh, totally. Well, even just like, I mean, you look at salmonoid species that, they have that little weird, like, I was hatched here and I will
Right.
return to this exact spot, even though I went hundreds of miles and ran around the ocean for my entire life. Like, you got to imagine that I'm not, I don't want to make the stretch that even like a bluegill has an ounce of IQ that would even come close to being able to do that. But like when we see some of these other species that are, and I don't know what exactly would have to go into it, because obviously, like smallmouth are like a more predatory fish than a bluegill. Although if a bluegill were the size of a smallmouth, it would be the most fearsome fish in
I mean,
fresh
that's
water.
what
I think it'd be piranhas. So
largemouth are
like,
just big sunfish, man.
right, exactly. Like, I don't know. I think you're absolutely right. Yeah, I don't think we know shit about what these fish are actually capable of. And I hope that hopefully in the next if you're going to put technology and modern science towards anything, let's start figuring out what fish can actually like comprehend and figure out like in terms of location or whatever. Maybe I don't know. I'd be curious.
I'm reading a book right now. I'm geeking out hard on like consciousness
Oh
lately
hell yeah.
and just reading about it. I'm reading a book about that's based on this woman's experience working in an aquarium, mostly with an octopus.
Hmm.
But she talks about how in the aquarium they work at, or she volunteered at, they had an electric eel. So they got an electric eel from the Amazon or wherever, and they built a habitat for it and put it in there, and realized pretty quickly that they're really boring. They don't do anything. Like they just lay in the grass on the bottom. They're like, well, this sucks as like an exhibit because people want
Yeah.
to see an electric eel and it's not doing anything. So they built this thing called like the worm dropper or something it'll periodically spin and just drop a worm into the water that they'll eat. And so these eels figured out that they can kind of suspend below that because that's the manna from heaven, right? Like that's where the
Hmm.
food's coming from. And that was cool, but they're like, we need more. And so they wanted to show like a visual representation of that eel's like brain chemistry, almost like it's like EKG thing
Hmm.
or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so they built a thing that could monitor its like electrical levels in its brain. And what they found out is they can watch these specific spikes and these patterns when they feed, when they're hunting, like when
Yep.
they know some food's coming or whatever, and they can see these things, represented in their essentially their thoughts, right? Like their brain synapses firing or whatever. And then they figured out that while that eel is sleeping, it's having dreams that are mirroring the same level. And so you're like in that eel's dream, it's doing something that is getting its brain as active as it is when it's feeding and it's awake. And you're
No
like,
kidding.
right. And so you're like, you said like, oh, bluegill, I don't think a bluegill has an ounce of whatever. It's like, I'm not so sure anymore. Like I
Right.
think we're not interested in that because bluegills are easy to catch. It's like I'm 1,000 times more interested in a white-tailed deer than I am a chipmunk. But like if I started paying attention to chipmunks, I'd probably see all kinds of behavior where I'm like, I had no idea that chipmunks did that. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? And so it's like I think there's like this field. I I, I think we just don't know so much. And I think
Hmm.
that's really cool. Like I think
Yeah.
that's why it's so fun to do what we do.
Yeah, definitely, dude. I mean, shit, even last night we were just watching a couple of chickadees fight or not chickadees, goldfinches on this pine tree outside of our screen porch, and we're watching them and these two males were just going at it and they were, wrapping entangling each other up and spiraling down and like hitting the ground and throwing each other through the branches and all that. I was like, they're just like turkeys. They do the same shit, huh? That's like
They
if
do.
these guys were bigger, they would, and they had a more menacing tweet than the little guy that they have there, something a little more gobble-esque. Like these things would be a hoot. We'd all love them,
It
but yeah,
it's crazy. I mean,
yeah,
I'm filming some new fishing content for Meat Eater, and I was down in Iowa filming a show in the beginning of May, and we had, that's when geese are nesting and doing their whole thing, and with the area we were at, it was covered in geese, and we filmed this fight between these two geese on the water, and it was like just brutal. I mean,
yeah,
they're biting each other's necks and going after each other's eyes, and like it's like a part wrestle match, part like hair pulling, like it's a straight street fight,
yep,
and you're just like, man, they're all like, that's just like what nature is,
hmm,
like that's just like, there's just like so much just raw, like we're going to figure this out. Like
yeah,
we're going to get this hierarchy like squared away. And
yeah,
we think about it only in the perspective of, the animals we really care about, right? Like the ones we hunt, but they're just, there's so much to them that we don't get. Like I was, our old CEO is now the CEO of Tethered, and I stayed in contact with him, and we were texting, I don't know, earlier this spring, and he was showing me some trail camera photos of this buck he was after last year. And it's a Tennessee deer that's like really nice, like big, big. And he was telling me about an encounter he had with him where he tried to call it in. The buck was, I think it was like a late October type thing where the dude's kind of, staging up, making some sign, whatever. And he tried to call him in, and he wasn't having it. And I just said, did you snort wheeze at him? And he said, yeah, I tried it once, but I don't think this deer is a fighter. And I'm like, they're all fighters. Like he can't not fight at some point. So like that situation, sure. But to just be like a mature buck like that is just never going to throw down. Like, I don't believe it. Like, I think they're all like that. I think every
hmm,
doe you meet will throw down at a certain point.
oh yeah. Yeah, yeah. I mean, we've all seen it when they'll run each other off, especially this time of year, and they're like kicking each other in the head, or even like that buck fawn starts getting a little bit squirrely, and he starts getting a little testosterone flowing. And she's like, "You gotta go, dude. Get the hell out of here!" And like she's kicking him in the head and pawing at his
Right.
shoulders. Like, yeah, like it's
But that's,
all yeah. Go ahead.
oh, I was just going to say, I've started to think about that. Like, that's resource guarding.
Hmm.
And
Totally.
like you see that old doe and she's throwing hooves at whoever gets near her. I
Yeah.
don't think it's because she's like pissed off at that individual deer. It's like, I'm on the spot that I want to be on because of whatever reason. Like the
Okay.
best
Sure.
alfalfa's here
Yep.
or whatever. And I think we don't think about it that way, but that dominates our lives too, right?
Hmm.
Like there's a reason you want to make more money and lift more weights.
Yep.
Like you're going to get a higher value mate. You're going to have more resources, and that's what we're all kind of fighting for. And I think when you look at nature that way, like you think about, you were telling me a story off air about hunting in Iowa and bumping a big one out of his bed and how perfect his bed was. And it's like, yeah, that if another buck came into that bed and he showed up, he's going to get that deer out of there. Because
Yeah.
that resource is that important to him because he won't get killed if he's in it. Or
Hmm.
his highest odds of survival are, I'm going to lay there because nothing can get anywhere near me. And like that's what they're doing.
Yeah.
Like they are claiming the best resources and using them for their survival, which is why a forky's a hell of a lot easier to kill than a 180 incher. Like that
Yeah.
forky's like, I'm on the secondary shit right off the field edge because I can't go anywhere else. And
Hmm.
it's like, yeah, he doesn't have access to the best resources.
Right, definitely. Well, that's such an interesting perspective to have too, like, because I think we always think of it in terms of like, well, that's his little safe zone, or that's his bedding area. Like, we don't want to touch it. We don't want to mess with it. We don't want to do anything that's gonna like make him potentially want to leave that. But not. No, I did not take what you said there as great. We're gonna barge in. We're gonna snort wheeze countless times at this deer, and we're gonna piss him off so that he comes sprinting into our lap, and that's how we're gonna hunt. As fun as that would be,
Right.
I do like the idea that like you can kind of push their buttons a little bit, and you can say
Right.
like, "Hey, well, this is a nice area. I could maybe set up in here." And I don't know, like we've all seen it too. Like we're even as humans, we go in and like, oh, we see a scrape on the way in and take a leak in it. And I mean, I've had it before on public where I peed in a scrape and was setting up and I heard a twig snap behind me and I didn't know exactly what it was because this scrape is probably 150 yards down this ridge. And I walked back out there a couple hours later and that branch had been fully ripped down. It was laying in that scrape that I had just peed in. I was like, well, that sucks,
Right.
but kind of cool.
Right. Right. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. So dude, back to the one other thing actually on the this will be a perfect segue because I'm still on trout brain here. That same guy that I talked with last week or whatever, he was saying that those brown trout, we talk about overlap in habitat and where they're living and like the warm water type stuff. There's all these tributaries that feed trout streams directly into the Mississippi or directly into the Wisconsin or whatever big river system you want to talk about, dude. Like those bodies of water, like the Mississippi River in the winter will hold trout, like big ass, like the
Right.
big predatory brown trout that we're talking about. And I don't know, that might have to be added to the bucket list for me, I think, actually, is pulling a big brown out of the Mississippi River because that would be
Dude, you hear about, I've
absolutely
never
epic.
done it. You hear about it. But that's the same play that a lot of people make on, try to catch big pike in the summer too, because that
Sure.
water temperature rolling in there is so much lower.
Yep.
But yeah, you hear about that every once in a while. Somebody ice fishing, they catch like an 8-pound brown. You're like, oh,
Yep.
so cool. So
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, absolutely. So, dude, when you're fishing the Mississippi, are you covering? Because I know you're up near the Twin Cities and everything. Are you covering quite a bit of the? Because I mean, you've got where you're positioned there. You have pretty reasonable access to a lot of different types of water, and especially in that upper stretch there. You go north and you're in that kind of rocky, almost like a Northwoods, like gnarly kind of typical Northwoods smalley water, and then you start getting down into the bigger stuff. And that's where you start thinking, oh, this is catfish water, or this is,
Right.
even paddlefish water, or whatever it may be. When it comes to kind of ironing out, or even like tracking smallmouth kind of like throughout a season, like, do you tend to look like further upstream, further downstream? Does it matter based on time of year? Or like, how do you see smallmouth moving through the river?
I mean, they're a lot easier to figure out the farther north you get, right?
Sure.
Because they
Yeah.
just have fewer options.
Yep.
Where I live here north of the Twin Cities, the river is a different thing than, pools 8, 9, 10, across prairie, wherever. And so it's just easier. You got current breaks. You can kind of pick and choose. Like you can figure out where they're going to spawn, where they're going to probably spend their time in the summer,
Yep.
and the thing about, smallies on a river system like that is, eventually they're probably going to end up in the main channel or relating to the main channel where the best current is.
Hmm.
So you sort of have that. You know what I mean? It's like, to me, I don't, if I go hunt somewhere, I'm probably not going to start on a field edge. Like if I'm on public land, even though I might be like, the bucks will probably end up here, but I'm not going to kill them here. I have to backtrack this and figure out where's that staging area or whatever.
Sure.
Smallies, like when you look at a river system, and I mean, this goes for a lot of different species. You see this with walleyes all the time. People follow them down from the dams after they spawn. But if you know where they're going and like, okay, well, you can be like, well, it's this time of year, right? So we're spawn, post spawn right now.
Hmm.
And like, okay, well, where would they spawn? You kind of can figure that out. You can look at it and go, they're not going to be super far from current, but they might not be around current. They'll be on some rocks, some sand, whatever, which you can
Right.
find everywhere. Doesn't really narrow it down. But you just know, like between there and the main channel, they're going to follow some route and they're going to end up out there. Right. And so like I talked to a guy last year. I was down fishing a tournament with my buddy, and this dude's a really good old school river fisherman. And he said he thinks of the river, the Mississippi specifically, as sort of a roadway system. And so we had fairly high water for that tournament. And so you sort of look at the bluffs and go, I'm going to get closer to the bluffs, right? Like I'm going to find
Yep.
a hard bank in some, you know, back cut somewhere. And this was more of a largemouth thing. This is a frog only tournament. But he was explaining, he's like, that's like a 2-track road, right? Like that little cut that will have a bunch of dogfish and nothing else in it in the middle of the
Hmm.
summer. when the water's high and the bait fish move in there to get out of the really ripping current or the muddier water, they're the fish will be there. And then as the water starts dropping, they're going to follow that little two track out to like a maybe a little bit bigger river seam that would be like a 2-lane highway or something, you know, or like a
Sure.
county road. And then that's going to lead to that highway. And eventually the main channel is like I-90 or 94 or whatever. It's like the interstate. And he's like, once you start thinking about it that way, you start looking for like stop off points. And like, where would they, if they were up here and they're not anymore, but they're not there yet, where are they? And
Hmm.
that's, you know, I think about it all the time. Like when I look at like where I think they should be and they're not, I'm not like, they're not biting. I'm not around them. Right. And, you know, sometimes there's a cold front, especially post spawn, they might just not be eating. Like
Yeah.
I fished a tournament years ago when Aquaview was like, this was when like, when underwater cameras were like starting to just get popular.
Hmm.
And it was on Vermilion up in northern Minnesota. And it was early June and it was cold, like cold. And we were fishing, you know, that lake is like 45,000 acres of rocky islands, like beautiful. Everywhere you turn, there's good cover, right?
Yep.
Good structure. And we fished this big rock pile and didn't catch anything. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to drop the camera down there and I'm just going to see. And it was like I dropped the camera in an aquarium that had been stocked with every fish in the lake. And there were smallies down there. There were muskies. There were huge schools of perch and walleyes. And I was like, okay, they're not eating. Like
Yep.
there were every fish in the world that could is right here and they're not. So like that does happen. It doesn't happen as much in current. And it doesn't happen very often outside of cold, cold water, cold air temps generally kind of coming together generally.
Yep.
And so I always look at it now and I'm like, okay, if I think they're supposed to be here on this, whatever, you know, this, part of the channel or something and they're not, like I'm not catching them, I'm like they're not here. Like
Right.
I have to follow this out and like which way should they be going? Is the water coming up? I'm going to be heading toward, you know, the bluffs, right? And like just working my way in and trying to figure that out. If the water's dropping or the water's pretty stable and the temperature's coming up, like okay, they're going to be going out toward the main channel somewhere. So you're like, you start to, it's sort of like we talk about bedding areas and we talk about food sources all the time, but a guy like me kills almost all of his deer between the two.
Yep.
Like, it's because that's where they're killable to me, and I
Hmm.
think a lot of people would really benefit from thinking about it that way, right? Like,
Yeah.
you're not gonna get into his bedding area and kill him very often. Like, you need a
Hmm.
really good setup to do that. You might kill him on the food if you have a really good place to hunt, but if you're hunting where there's other people or whatever, or it's, you know, the 3rd week of the season and they've been hunted on the food enough, then that in between is where it's gonna happen. And
Yeah.
that's where that scouting comes into play of finding that pinch point between where you think he's bedding on that, you know, bench or whatever, and I know he's going to the soybeans eventually. Like it's all kind of the same game, I think.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely, dude. I love that analogy of like the roadways and the highway system there too, and figuring out where they're at, and especially on river systems, because that's one thing that like well, you said it there, on talking about Vermilion, like the fish just aren't biting. I think sometimes we can fall into that headspace where we're like, well, there's so much water here. This spot should be as good as any. Like they're just not biting today. They don't like what I'm doing. You could have sat on that same rock pile and you could have just swapped lures and baits and plastics and all that stuff for hours and not moved. Or you could have just moved on and tried to figure out
Right.
where they're actually at. Like kind of similar to like that mobile hunting mindset a little bit of like, that's one of the reasons, like, I also love river systems because there's so many tribs and feeders and
Right.
stuff like that that, like, they could be anywhere, and if it's bad down here, we'll just move up to the next one and, like or the next channel or the next break or whatever it is, and like, "Oh, wow, holy shit, here they all are." And, yeah, dude, having that mobile mindset while you're in the boat, 'cause, I mean, it's fun too. I mean, the Mississippi's
Right.
gorgeous, so, like, why wouldn't you wanna
Right.
tour it around rather than sit on the the same break you've been on all morning or whatever? When it comes to, like, prioritizing so it sounds like depth and, sort of like a staging area is sort of your priority as you're like looking for these areas, like that main channel and how it relates to like, are they in the main channel? Are they out just off of it? Are they like near the feeder creeks, near the bluffs and stuff like that, where they can get out of the current and everything? Like, I guess this time of year, like how are you I guess where are you looking for these fish right now? Are you looking for them to start to come off of those those walls and that kinda shallow back eddy type stuff and looking for those shelves and drop offs near the main channel, sounds like.
Yeah. I mean, when you're dealing with smallies, like, you can always start with rocks, right?
Mhm.
Like,
Right.
I mean,
Yep.
they just relate to rocks so well.
Mhm.
This time of year, that's where I'm starting. I'm like, "Where's the current? Where's the rocks?" Like, "Where are these seams?" You end up when I'm fishing post-spawn, like, post-spawn smallies can be a pain, right? Like,
Yeah, right.
they're not maybe gonna chase down a buzz bait for 40 yards and eat. Like, you gotta throw a wacky rig or something in their face and kinda make them eat or something
Yep.
that's just like an easy meal. But, the thing about almost all fish, smallies for sure, is like you just need one to show you something. You know what I mean? So it's like if what you're doing isn't working, like, okay, maybe if I'm fishing the rocks, it's like not working, like maybe they're on sand drops. Like where's the closest sand drops? Because they'll just drop below those and let the food feed them, or let the current feed them, and eventually you got to catch one. And
Right.
it's like, okay, well, what this fish was doing wasn't an accident. Like every once in a while you'll catch one, you're like, why? Like,
Yeah.
why were you here? Why did you eat this? And I just don't think that it's like an accident. Like I think they're telling you something, right? It's like
Mhm.
you hear this, and this happens a lot when you're hunting, where you go out in mid October and you're like, it's gonna suck, but maybe I'll shoot a doe or whatever, and then you see a 130 eating acorns, and you're like, that wasn't an accident.
Yep.
Like it feels like a fluke because I'm not expecting it, but he's not gonna risk his life for nothing, you know?
Right.
And
Yep.
so like what one smallie does, if they're on that sand drop, they're probably eating minnows, right? Like they're probably not
Yep.
eating crayfish, and there's some kind of pin minnow hatch or something going on that's like, put them there, right?
Mhm.
If they're on the rocks and you catch one, you're like, okay, maybe they're eating crayfish. Like it's like, now where can I replicate this? I drew a guy in a
Right.
tournament years ago, down in Winona, Minnesota, and I was going to school there. It was perfect. It was the last tournament of the tour, and I'm like, it never happens in your hometown, right? Like you're always
Yep.
traveling somewhere. And I pre-fished with him, and he was one of the best jig fishers, like flipping jigs that I've ever seen. Like he had that flipping stick in his hand the whole time. And we, fished different stuff. And at one point I was like, why this wing dam and not that one? And this was like paper map days, right?
Yep.
And he's like, we're going to fish this one because a lot of them are just a straight line, right? Like they're just a line of rocks and it's a current break and fish will move in on them. But every one that he fished either came off a point of an island or it had like a dog leg in it, like an elbow in it. And
Okay.
he's like, we're not fishing the ones that are exactly like all the other ones. We're going to just go fish the ones that have a higher likelihood of having a school on them because they offer something different. And I just remember thinking like, that would have I would have maybe stumbled onto that accidentally. I don't know if I would
Mhm.
have ever like made that connection, but that little thing, you're like, okay, that makes sense. Right?
Right.
Like, why not? Because there's going to be a different level of current break on there.
Yeah.
It just offers them something different. And so you can start looking at it because that's when you look at fishing like the Mississippi River, I always feel like it's the same thing when I go elk hunting. And I am not used to the mountains. And so I walk into the mountains and in my low level of experience with elk, everything looks elky, right?
Yep.
Like the meadow, I'm like, why isn't there a bull standing in this? Right.
Mhm.
I'm in this beautiful, aspen stand that's just gorgeous. And you're like, this is where they should be bugling. But it's like, no, they're in a few pockets, probably pretty tight to the dark timber or in the dark timber because of the pressure. An elk doesn't care if he has to walk 2 miles to get to the meadow to feed at night. That's nothing to him,
Right.
you know? And so then you have to start thinking about it and go like, even though everything looks amazing, most of it just isn't gonna hold what I'm looking for. And the Mississippi's like that. That's the same thing with largemouth fishing on the Mississippi. You go out there in the summer, you're like, everything looks like I can throw a frog in here and catch giants.
Yep.
Mostly doesn't, because you mostly need some kind of a little current to go through there, and where you find one, you'll find 10, but
Yep.
where you mostly will find none, and
Sure.
so you start looking for those little types of things. And that's what's so fun about it. And the fact that it just changes all the time.
Hey guys, I just wanted to take a quick sec to tell you about Lone Wolf Custom Gear. Lone Wolf Custom Gear is as good as it gets when it comes to mobile hunting equipment. Whether you're a saddle or stand guy, public land or private, Lone Wolf Custom Gear has a set of sticks, a stand, a camera arm, and any number of accessories to get you closer to your target buck. To make it even better, everything is 100% USA sourced and made right here in the Midwest. And it's even assembled right across the river in Iowa by hunters who love chasing deer just as much as you do. To build your kit today, go visit lonewolfcustomgear.com. Now, let's get back to the episode. Right. Yeah, dude, one of the things you said there, you think it's a fluke because you weren't expecting it. Like,
Right.
dude, that I love that because that, I mean, that encompasses, I mean, obviously all this stuff transcends both fishing and hunting and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, like you're right, he was there for a reason. When you find those fish, like say it's like you started at the gravel and then you bump down to the sand drop off or whatever. Are you, I guess, what tools are you using nowadays in terms of like, could be Onyx fish, could be, depth finder, stuff like that. Are you going to investigate where you like hooked that fish and see like, okay, what's actually happening here? Is there a piece of structure that I'm like relating to, or are you just casting right back to that, general
So
area and trying to pick things up? Or when you get a lead like that, what's the next step for you?
I, I use Onyx fish. I got
Hmm.
graphs on my boats. Like
Yeah.
I have technology, right?
Hmm.
But I am not, that is not my style with stuff. Like I'm
Okay. Sure.
very, I, it's not like I don't use them, but I am
Yeah.
very sort of just like instinctive. Like my tournament partner is very tactical. Like I'm going to fish
Sure.
this. I'm going to fish this. And he's like, he and I work really well together because I kind of just go by feel a lot, right? Like I'll just be going down the river and look at something and like, I got to just go check that out.
Yep.
Like for whatever reason. And I do the same thing with hunting too. And so for me, like if somebody's listening to this and they're like, I want to go catch smallies on the river. I mean, the first thing that you have to do is just sort of recognize what they will probably be on this time of year. And then you have to use something that'll make them eat. And
Right.
so for me, I throw a lot of flukes and a lot of Senkos. If they're not, especially this time of year, if they're not like going to smash a top water at first light and show me that there's a school around, it's different when you can kind of chunk and wind and they're going to show themselves.
Totally. Yep.
And I just have a ton of confidence in on the river, especially with flukes, because they're, every fish out there eats minnows, right?
Oh
And
yeah.
a minnow that can't swim very well,
Yep.
and Texas rig 'em, so you're not going to get hung up on stuff if you're fishing timber or whatever. But to me, it's like if I catch a fish doing this, I'm looking around, I'm like, why? Right? Like why was that fish there and how can I do this again? And one of the things you learn, I learned this when I started fishing a lot of sand drops later in the summer,
Hmm.
is not only how many fish will hit right away, but like what I can do to make more of them bite in that same spot. And so you see this happen a lot. We found a spot probably like 4 or 5 years ago, uh, down south of La Crosse that had it was basically a big backwater lake that had one big channel flowing through it. So it had current. And on that big channel, there was one little sand drop that was like, I don't know, maybe the size of a pickup bed. Like it was small, but there were a bunch of bait fish on there. So how we found it was these fish came up, blew up. And like, okay, there's a school of smallies or whiteys there, one of the two. And so we fished it and it was all smallies and there was a bunch of good ones in there. And so we had back-to-back tournaments. We had a frog only tournament, so we didn't fish that spot because it was smallies and we had other largemouth stuff. But the next day we fished a smaller team tournament that had we could fish with whatever we wanted. So we started there. And I was throwing a whopper plopper first because I'm like, they're schooled up smallies in the middle of summer. They're going to eat top water.
Yep.
And we pulled up and it was my partner didn't pick up his rod for a while. He was just running the net and weighing fish because it was just covered in them, right?
Yep.
And then you start to put those fish down and you're like, I know we didn't catch them all. And so then now you throw a swim jig up there and swim it through there or a swim bait and you pick up a couple more and they won't
Hmm.
come up on that top water anymore. Like you just haven't had that reset moment yet.
Yep.
And then after a while, you catch a couple fish that way. And then pretty soon you're flipping a tube up there or a jig up there. And it's just sort of rolling around that current, falls down that drop off, and you'll pick a couple more up and it's done. And that's one of the things, like if you watch like coverage of BASS or MLF or whatever, those guys know how to make fish eat. They're
Yep.
like, they have like supreme belief in themselves to like, if the fish are here, I can make them eat. And I think a lot of fishermen go out and they just like really look for opportunistic fish. Like if that fish comes up on that buzzbait, great. If not, I'm not going to try anything else, even though I
Right.
think there might be fish here. And it's kind of the same thing. Like it to me, it feels sort of like the dude who just wants to sit the field edge and throughout the season will maybe throw out a decoy or maybe start rattling or start calling or something. He's like, I want to just make this spot work. I
Yep.
want that buck
Right.
like just will work with my shortcomings, right? And the people who are really good don't do that because that's a low odds thing. Like you might
Mhm.
kill one every 10 seasons that way. And then you're like, this is it. This is all I
Yep.
have to do. But it just doesn't work that well. And
Yep.
so I kind of look at it that way where I'm like, you have, like if they show you something like they're here, you got to work through that water column. You got to show them different stuff, like different presentations, like maybe that reaction bite out of something, and then maybe just dragging a Ned rig along the bottom and in front of their face, like that kind of stuff. And like
Yep.
eventually they usually show you what you need to do. And then you can just try to replicate that.
Mhm. Definitely, dude. Yeah, I love that, and I've talked with a lot of my guide clients about that as well, like with trout, where you lay them down, and you think that like something like, oh, we spooked them or something bad happened. It's like, no, more like literally take 2 steps forward and make the same exact cast on the same exact lane, and they're like, oh, there's 3 more fish. I'm like, yeah, because they heard their buddy get caught, and they're not going to run half a mile upriver, run for cover. They're just like, that was weird. I'm just gonna move up here. Like I use the analogy all the time of like, oh, if you're walking through the city at night, you hear 2 guys shouting, down the block from you, you're probably gonna cross the street, right? Like, yeah, you're not gonna want to hang out there, like just in case if anything happens. I love
But I
that
mean,
approach too. But so good.
oh, that's like a great way to look at it. Like
Hmm.
stream trout teach you that, right?
Yeah.
Like if you're working upstream and you have a nice run, like somebody who doesn't know what they're doing will cast to the top of it first because
Yep.
they're like, that's the best looking water. And it's like, you might have put yourself in a position where you bump those tailwater fish up. So they already spoiled the school, or you're
Hmm.
going to go throw something through and have a couple fish swipe at it. But you've already like you've selected out most of the fish there that could be caught by being a little more systematic about it and working your way up into
Yep.
that best water. And
Exactly.
that's the same thing. I mean, we were just up north fishing and I was with my daughters and we were fishing, we fished a couple docks. And I was like, if you look at it like I'm going to fish this side first, and maybe there's a tire here and in a stairwell or something on this side first. Like I'm going to fish the thing that's going to screw it up the least if I catch one, right?
Sure.
Maybe it's not my
Yep.
highest odds, like skipping way under there, to the center of it is my highest odds, right?
Hmm.
But I'm going to pick apart that thing and I'm going to pick apart that thing. Then I'm going to start working underneath it. And then I'm going to do the thing on the other side. And you just see like people kind of just don't think about stuff that way,
Yep.
right? Like
Exactly.
that like you can maximize that opportunity, and you see that really play out with schooled fish. Like
Totally.
if you think about how you would have the most minimal impact for as long as possible while still giving your chance to catch them, you'll catch more,
Yep. It's just like stage hunting. Like it's
right?
you're moving that stand 10 yards further down the trail or 20 yards further down the trail. Like, let me ask you on that note there of like, say you've got a spot like that sand hump that was in that little lake and everything. When you're starting on a new spot or a spot that you want to check out, do you tend to start for like with a more I guess, how do you test the waters in there? Obviously, the type of structure it is going to dictate whether or not, like you said, like it's rocky, we might lean more or crayfish imitation. If it's sandy, we might lean more minnow, that kind of stuff. You'd like to go big in your face right off the bat and get that first one to eat, or are you slipping in there first and testing the waters?
So I mean, it depends what time of year it is,
Sure.
right? Like there's certain times where you can they're just going to eat a big topwater or something,
Right.
or come up on a spook or something. But a lot of times, like I really look at every fish that I want to catch eats minnows,
Yep.
right? Every fish that I want to catch probably eats crayfish at some point too, but
Hmm.
every one of them will eat a minnow in its face. And
Yeah.
so, like, if I'm searching, I throw a lot of swim baits. 'cause I mean, I can catch anything, right? And it's like, uh, especially on the Mississippi River, you'll find species mixed together,
Yep.
on grass lines and sand drops and whatever, and I can catch anything on a swim bait. And so it's like, if I'm throwing out there and I catch a northern or I catch a walleye or something, I'm like, "That's not a smallie, maybe that's not, like, my target, but that's telling me a lot."
Yep.
You know what I mean? And so I look at this like, if I'm running a search bait thing, I want to give everybody who will eat a chance to eat, right?
Mhm.
Then I'll sort of pare down and cater it a little more. And so I'm always looking with stuff like that, right? Like if I just need to find them, I'll use a small swim bait because everything will eat it. And then
Sure.
I can, once they show themselves, it's like the observation stand thing, right?
Yep.
I sit in a lot of trees every fall where I'm like, I'm probably not going to shoot one, but I'm going to learn something that will put me in a position, or I'm trying to learn something that will put me in a position
Yep.
to shoot one. Like
Yeah.
you just haven't moved in there yet because you're like, I just don't know. And I
Mhm.
think, you can, if you get onto a, you know, flooded timber bite or something, or you get onto like a riprap bite and they're there, like that's what they're using. Like you can go along and flip that, and they're eating crayfish or a square bill or something for sure. But for me, like a confidence thing is like I'm just going to feed them minnows. And I
Totally.
learned this. We have a place on a lake in northern Minnesota, and I don't fish walleyes very much. I just
Mhm.
don't. But I've noticed that in early June, I catch walleyes because they're shallow. They're
Yep.
moving, they spawned and they're moving out. So they're kind of meeting the smallies where they're moving in, you know?
Yep.
And so they share the same kind of stuff. And then I don't catch walleyes at all for like a month and a half. And then as it gets into like middle of August, I start catching walleyes again. And a lot of it is because there's these like shiner hatches or something going on where now there's a bait ball blowing up and down this shoreline and everybody's eating them. And
Yep.
I can figure that out if I throw a swim bait in there, but I won't figure that out if I throw a whopper plopper in there. You know,
Totally.
Even though in the last 2 years, I've actually found a few spots where I've caught walleyes on topwater, which is insane, which just tells you how many fish are there. But it's
Yep.
kind of like that thing. Like first, it's the same thing. We when somebody like talks to you or I, and they want to go on their first public land bow hunt, and they're from wherever, I don't care, Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin, whatever, and they have a good place to hunt at home, right? Grandma's farm or the lease or whatever. They're like, I'm going to go to Missouri and I'm going to hunt public land. And, I'd be happy with a 130, 140. And I'm like, you need to go down there and just find deer first.
Right.
Like, you've already said that all of these deer below that aren't your caliber, but you can't take that experience from that lease and put it on that public land in Missouri and expect it to work super well. Some of it'll
Yep.
translate, but a lot of it doesn't. And I'm like, if you don't start that, it's the same thing as the Western elk thing. If you go out there and you're like, I only need a 300-inch bull, I'm like, you don't even know how to find elk yet. And that's
Yep.
a huge problem. Like you find them, then you have something to work, but mostly you won't find them. And so you're like, it's like sort of a mental thing. Right? You gotta open yourself up to everything before you can kind of narrow it down and, you know, look for something
Totally.
bigger.
Yeah, totally. Well, I feel like so many of the articles you read, whether it be in like in Fisherman or whatever, it's like focused on a very specific strategy or tactic or method of catching smallmouth or walleye or whatever it is. And they're like, here's the area you need to be in. This is the type of structure. This is the lure you need to be doing it. Here's how you need to be doing it. It's like, well, you can do all that stuff, but say the water's like 9 degrees lower
Right.
and like doesn't work, just flat out doesn't work. And then you start second guessing yourself. But I love that approach of feed them something that every fish in that system is going to eat. It could be a 10-inch smallmouth. It could be coveted 20 or whatever. Either way, they're going to chow it down. Like we do the
Right.
same thing with trout, like a little, size 8 woolly bugger. Every trout in the
Right.
stream eats that thing. And it just catches fish. Right. And doing that and then starting to hone in
Right.
from there.
Well,
When it,
I mean,
sorry, go ahead.
hold on a sec. You have to remember when you're talking like an in fish article, they're working backwards from a lure, right?
Totally.
Like
Yep.
that's an
So
advertiser
true.
driven model.
So true.
And so, pure fishing or whatever is paying the bills. They're going to find the new whatever it is
Yep.
and figure out a tactic around it. And not to say it doesn't work. Like I used to
Mhm.
work in that. I used to work in the in fish office. Like I used to fish with Steve Quinn after work sometimes. Like that was a interesting experience to me, but
Mhm.
it's sort of like I don't know, a trail camera company dumps a ton of money into the hunting industry to take the top spot. You're going to
Yep.
start seeing a lot of articles and a lot of content about how trail cameras are your answer to killing big deer. It's like,
Yep.
yeah, they can be, but where this is coming from a place that's not just pure as good of advice as I can give you. It's coming from a
Mhm.
place where I'm like, we're keeping the lights on
Right,
and
yeah.
we have the conclusion. We just have to figure out how to put it into practice,
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that was one of the things that I was very much enjoying as you were talking about swim baits and flukes and stuff like that. I'm like, "Yes, it's something that everybody walks by, everybody sees them, and they catch the hell out of fish, but they're not sexy like throwing that
Right.
big Europala or that big, bucktail or whatever it may be that everybody wants to throw." And yeah, they just catch so many more fish than anything else. When it comes to kind of dissecting playing the color game a little bit, obviously the Mississippi gets high, nasty, everything flows down into it. It can get super muddy, low visibility. What colors do you tend to run to just make sure that your lures are found?
Dude, I'm a pretty simple guy now. Like so for a couple of years, this was a while ago, but for a couple of years I fished as a co-angler or an amateur, and I fished a lot of river tournaments. Some of the tours were all rivers or all on the river, different pools. Some of them
Mhm.
would just visit there. And when you're on the back of the boat, especially if in a pro co thing where you're fishing against the guy in front, he doesn't want you to catch any fish. You really gotta like it's a different mindset thing. Like it sucks. It's not fun.
Right.
And I got into the habit of just like if I'm with a guy, some people you would work with you, right? Like some people would be like, I want you to catch fish, I want to catch fish. Like you kind of just establish the boundaries right away, and those are great.
Yep.
But a lot of them, they do not want you to catch fish,
Yep.
and they might, there's a lot of ways they can keep you from doing that. And so for me, I was like, if I'm fishing behind somebody like that who doesn't want me to catch fish, I can flip a black and blue jig, just a flipping jig, and eventually I'll catch fish. Because whatever they're doing, even if they're flipping ahead of me, they're not going to hit everything. And
Yep.
and a lot of times they're throwing a crankbait or a spinnerbait or something, and they are fishing over fish and past fish. And it just made me realize I'm like, I almost wouldn't need to do anything else. Like this is just this dark colored crayfish looking thing works really well, largemouth, smallmouth, northerns, whatever.
Yep.
But over time, I'm like, I'll either throw white or white chartreuse something just because it just fish see light colored minnows and
Yep.
chartreuse just
Pops.
works. Right. Like it shows up, or I throw very natural. Like
Okay, sure.
a black, brown pumpkin seed, green pumpkin, some kind of thing like that.
Yep.
Very rarely do I do anything flashy. Like maybe with a chatterbait, I'll use something that's like reddish in certain situations.
Sure.
But it's like a very simple thing for me. Like I go
Mhm.
pretty natural, but every once in a while you run into something that just like, for whatever reason catches you off guard. And like,
Yep.
we do a lot of frog fishing in the summer, primarily for largemouth, but you catch smallies on them too.
Mhm.
And I throw a lot of spro frogs. I like spro frogs, like I just do. And at one point, a couple years ago, uh, I was re-upping on spro frogs. So we go through a billion of them. Me and my daughters and northerns chew them up and whatever. And they had these bright pink, like flamingo pink spro frogs.
Yep.
And I was like, does it even matter? Like, would it matter? And so I bought a bunch of them because they were on sale, and fish in like stained water, like tannic water, like not
Yep.
not crystal clear, gin clear water, crush pink frogs.
Yep.
And so then I'm like, okay, well, sometimes you just get an outlier like that. But then so I bought those, and we've been catching the crap out of fish on them, and they work great on the river. Like I throw them on the river all the time. And I think it's just
Mhm.
like they can just see it really well.
Yeah.
But then I was thinking about it, and I was like, man, I drew a dude on a tournament on Pokegama Lake in northern Minnesota up by Grand Rapids one time years ago. And he was throwing pink flukes in this very
Mhm.
tannic brown water.
Mhm.
And you throw a white fluke into that water, you throw a pink fluke into that water, you throw a chartreuse fluke in the water, they all kind of look the same. Like they
Yep.
all kind of have the same sort of vibe. And I just remember like had totally forgot that. And I was like, "Well, yeah, duh. It looks just like it just looks good, right? Like, it
Yep.
looks like the food that they're eating for some reason." And so, yeah,
Mhm.
sometimes you run into, like, an outlier color like that where you just need to, like you need to get past your own hang up, you know?
Yep. Well, dude,
Mostly
that makes me wonder too, because we've had, like, tons of grasshopper patterns. I mean, shit, I got one sitting on my desk right here. Nice pink grasshopper, and I was
right.
always like, for whatever reason, it works. I know driftless trout, they just like pink and purple, like, you got the pink squirrel, all that crap, but wasn't until I started talking to other guys, and they're like, "Well, yeah, it's red is the first color that gets filtered out as you go deep down there." So, like, does a pink fluke or a pink frog or a pink hopper, especially in that stained water, does that higher density stain, does that just make it look the perfect shade of white, the perfect shade of, like, whatever it may be? I like
I think
that.
so. I mean,
Yeah,
I think
right.
it does, and I think again, we don't really know what fish
Mhm.
see,
Yep.
you know? Like, I remember I hung a stand one time in southeastern Minnesota over this trout stream just to hunt this crossing, and I sat there all day during the rut, and I could watch trout all day, and I was like it was so fun. It just so fun to be, 17 feet above this trout stream and just, like,
Mhm.
look down and see, you know, they're like a buck, right? Like, a buck comes in and beds down, you're like, "I can't see it anymore." Like, I know
Yep.
it's right there, it just disappeared, then it moves its head, and you're
Yep.
like, "Holy shit, it's right there."
Yeah.
And, like, a trout does that, they go down on the bottom and they just sit, and you're like, "He's gone." Then you watch him rise up and check something out, or you watch him just flash quick or eat something, and, like, over the time, you just see these, like, kind of, like, behaviors emerge, and I'm like, "I don't know what I think I know about them, I don't know anything."
Mhm.
Like, so I think that with the colors, I think you're right on that. Like, I think we don't really know what they see, but I think something like that, it turns into something that works with their vision. Like, they're just like,
Totally.
"I eat things that look like that."
Yep. Absolutely. Well, kinda like you said earlier, most of these lures that we have in the shops or wherever are designed to catch more fishermen than they are fish, and keeping it simple and, just
Right.
figuring out what colors work, keeping it natural, all that stuff that, yeah, that'll pay dividends down the road there for sure. When it comes to so, like, obviously, the Mississippi is a complex river, right? You've got creek mouths, you've got big braids of island chains and stuff like that. When, I guess, do you see these fish start to focus on that main channel? And on top of that, I guess one of the questions I had earlier, how deep, like, the main channel for the most part is a lot shallower than most people think on the Mississippi, right? Like, isn't it? I think the
Yeah,
average depth is like 8 feet or something like that.
yeah.
Obviously, there's pools and buckets and stuff, but when it comes to like actually gauging depth and like kind of starting to focus on some of the different structure features, like, do you pay much attention to the braid or the, chain of islands that's adjacent to the main current? Are you trying to find that transition depth of, like, maybe there's a big shelf or it falls off from those islands down into the main channel there? Like, what kind of stuff are you looking for on the bottom?
You know, I I'm such a bass guy, like, I always start on top, or I'll start in the
Hell yeah.
top part of the water column,
Yep,
whether I'm throwing
totally.
top water or not, and then work it back, and
Mhm.
that's why it's so important to be there at first light, right?
Sure.
When they're up and feeding, because if there's a school up and feeding, at sunrise, those fish aren't probably going that far away if they're in a summer pattern, but
Right.
they're not gonna be up there that active throughout the day. So you gotta
Mhm.
you gotta work your way back down, and so I'll do that. I'll try to get the easy ones, and then I'm like, if there's a zone here where I believe they're here and I can't catch them doing something easy now, then it's time to flip and figure them out. And you're working back deeper, and that's the thing too. Like, when you fish a dynamic river like that has those islands and it has huge shallow lakes and flooded timber, and then the main channel and these secondary channels, you start to realize how important a hard bank is, like a hard vertical-ish bank, right?
Yep.
So you think about, if you fish in the spring and that river floods, that chain of islands might be great in August because there's really good current breaks off the front of it, and there's some timber and a defined sand edge or whatever. But in late May, if it floods, they're they can go anywhere,
Right.
and they don't seem to really like it, but they will move to a hard bank and just go up and down with it. you know? And
Mm,
so you start thinking about stuff like that and going, well, what's the water clarity? Is the water rising or falling? Which is huge because it's very rarely is it like stable, you know?
right.
Like that whole lock and dam system's incredible, like
Yeah.
incredible engineering. But those fish are very responsive to water going up and down, you know? And so it's like one of those things where you're like, okay, well that I can, I'm sure there are people out there who can find fish on flooded islands like crazy. I'm not one of them.
Yep.
But I know that if the water is fluctuating, a hard bank is going to work for me. Right. And
Sure.
that hard bank might be the riprap on the main channel if it's the right time of year, or it might be way back banked up against those bluffs somewhere if it's a different time of year. But so then you're like, all right, well, if I kind of believe in that pattern and I don't get them this way, do I have to go back and flip it? Or do I have to do something else to just fish them a little deeper? Maybe they're in a little neutral or negative mood. And
Sure.
I'll never forget, I drew a guy in an Everstart tournament years ago where we launched out of I think it was out of Red Wing, but he and I were fishing Lake Pepin up there by Lake City, across from, kind of Alma or whatever, Pepin, whatever. And he was from PA and he fished he fished big water smallies a lot, like big Great Lakes smallies.
Sure.
And he had a drift sock in his boat, which no bass guy ever uses. It's like a total walleye guy thing, right?
Yep.
And he was fishing tubes and marking fish on the bottom in like 18, 20 feet of water, way off of like I'd have been pounding the riprap, right? Like that's just what I'd have been doing.
Mhm.
And he was like fishing them almost like a goby or something, popping up off the bottom.
Yep.
And it was just a master class in something I never did. And I think about all the time now, where it's like you have some fish up shallow on those rocks, right? But you also have these fish that have slid way out into this nice slow water and they're not really holding on a ton. Like there's like maybe a break line between the rocks and the mud or sand or whatever, but they're just chilling there, right? And
Yep.
that's what we're seeing with the forward facing sonar movement right now is how
Mhm.
many people are finding bass that are just laying out there somewhere, or walleyes or whatever. And they're like, I'm going to throw a dice rig or something in front of their face. I'm going to make them eat.
Yep.
And it's like those fish, people figured them out before that guy had them figured out, right? But those fish are beyond reach of most people when
Yep.
they're in that stage, right? It's
Totally.
kind of like that buck that's like in that bed that you were talking about. Like that buck, he's there. You can
Mhm.
hunt around him. You're not going to kill him.
Yep.
Like until he does something different. If he sticks to that, you're just not going to do it.
Yeah.
Like I don't care. And when you see stuff like that, you're like, man, there's so much I could be doing or trying to figure out. And so it always starts with like, what's my intuition? Should be fish here. Fish shows me something. If I can't replicate it, what am I missing? And it's,
Yep.
it rarely is it going shallower, right? Like most of
Mhm.
the time, you're like, I gotta go deeper. The trout thing too, right? Like
Yep.
you you start out, throw dry flies or whatever, throw those hoppers, but you're fishing for different fish than you would be, running a streamer and nymph through there that's 3 feet down versus on the surface. Like it's
Yep.
just a different thing. And sometimes you catch them all on top, and you don't need to do that. Sometimes you only catch them rolling that nymph through the deep stuff. But a lot of
Mhm.
times, like sometimes it's this and sometimes it's that. And I just
Definitely.
think that's just cool.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Do you tend to find so, like, obviously, the Mississippi is not a super we're not gonna find fish that are, like, suspended generally in current that are, like, middle of the water column. Maybe they're, like, I don't know what a
You'd be
deep hole would even
surprised,
be. You find those mid-column fish?
dude. When you get like a fish fly hatch or you get the right kind of bait fish hatch,
Yep.
it's incredible. And that's the thing with smallies. Like you'll see this with like little wolf packs of largemouth, some,
Mhm.
but you see it more with walleyes, you see it more with channel cats, and you see it more with smallies where they'll follow bait fish. And
Sure.
you're
Yeah.
like, it's just like ocean fishing almost, where you'll see a bait wad and there's all kinds of layers of predatory fish that are taking advantage of that.
Yep.
Really hard to find. Like
Yeah.
it's different with forward facing sonar, but that thing exists. That thing exists in lakes a lot. And I think people, we're so structure oriented that we're like, okay,
Mhm.
I'm gonna of this rock pile, and they're going to eat and they're here, or they're not going to eat and they're not here, or whatever. But those most of those fish might be 50 yards off of that on some kind of bait ball that's just like, in 20 feet of
Moving
water,
along.
6 feet down.
Yep.
And so the spot that I found that I caught the walleyes on top water was a old creek channel or old river channel going through a lake. And the only reason I found it, I was fishing a rock pile and I saw a fish blow up out in the middle of nothing. And I was like, sure, that sure had Smalley vibes, but like,
Mhm.
why? And I went out there and it was just a drop off on a creek channel that the fish were just posting up on. And it was because that creek channel out there was feeding them bait fish. And so all of those fish were primed to eat on that. But what I started to find was they weren't just like locked onto that little kind of underwater point drop off thing. Like they were just like orbiting that area. And it
Sure.
was because that had just the way that everything worked there was bait fish suspended out there and scattered around. And those fish were just kind of like, I move here, I'm going to bump into them eventually or whatever. And there was a
Mhm.
high concentration of predators. And that stuff's freaking awesome. Like when you
Oh,
find something,
yeah.
you're like, nobody else is going to figure this out. And somebody
Yeah.
does, right? But that's the kind of stuff that makes you feel like I've got it dialed.
Yeah. Yeah, that old timer in his 10-foot John boat that
Right.
Evan Rude's just dumping smoke while he putts across the river. He knows
Right.
exactly where those fish are at, but
Yep.
that's funny, dude. One of the things I mean, it sounds like the answer is yes, but, like, you'll see smallies crashing on bait on the
All the
Mississippi.
time.
Oh, dude,
All
that's
the
the
time.
best. It's the
I mean, you
best.
see
Oh,
you see all kinds of fish. I mean, that's one of the things that's so fun about it is current fish just eat.
yep,
They're
totally.
just easier to catch. It's
Yep.
it can be a harder environment to fish in,
Mhm.
but they're easier to catch because 'cause they're just primed to eat. And so, yeah, I mean, and you get into midsummer and the back half of summer, and that's how we find a lot of fish. And we actually
Sure.
find a lot of our really good, like, frog fishing spots, uh, because a lot of times, they're not eating frogs in there, right? Like,
Mhm.
there's a concentration of bait fish that they're blowing up,
Yep,
but they'll eat a frog
totally.
just as well as they'll eat anything else, and that's just like
Yep.
the kind of thing you can fish there. But yeah, you get a visual on them a lot, and that part makes it real fun.
Dude,
That's the
totally.
kind of shit when they're blowing up on like uh, you know, pin minnows or whatever on a point. I'm like, why does anybody ever fish walleyes? Like,
Yep.
what do you guys? Do you see this?
Dude, absolutely. Yeah, that we're open to maybe get out this coming weekend on the Wisconsin and do a float, which might be just a hair early. I haven't heard much from folks who've been fishing down there, but hopefully we start to see some of those shad start to hatch a little bit. We start getting a couple crashing fish or at least some.
Real close, buddy.
I know, like it's gonna we're gonna be a day early or a day late. That's what I'm fully prepared for. But no, dude, that's awesome, man. And I mean, it's super cool because I've never, like I said, I've been around the Mississippi my entire life, but I've never fished it. I've never really done a whole lot other than like hunted a few times. And every time I go out there, I'm always like duck hunting in particular. I'm always amazed by how much shallower it is. Cause you drive over on a bridge and you're like, holy shit, that's a big river. And then you get out there, you're like, wait, it's knee deep for
Right.
like 600 yards out here. What are you talking about? Just because I can't see bottom. And so, like, yeah, dude, the exploration side of things, uh, definitely, I don't know, it's just a mysterious place, man. It's super cool.
It
There's super,
it's so
super
good.
yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
and
it's
it's intimidating.
well, that's the thing, right? Like it's not fishing a lake, but
Yeah,
it's so fertile and the quality of fish in there is so good. It's
yep,
just it's crazy how often I don't fish it nearly as much as I used to when I lived down there, but it's
mhm,
crazy how often that I'll catch my biggest of whatever species on the limited amount of time I spent on the Mississippi versus all of the other lakes and rivers that I fish. It's just
yep,
I mean, I'll give you an example. A couple years ago, we were pre-fishing for a tournament, and we were throwing. I was throwing a Ned rig. I don't remember what my buddy was throwing, and I kept having fish like short strike, and I'm like, man, I keep feeling fish. It's definitely not bass. And he goes, it could be jumbo perch. And so we scaled down, and we filled his live well with like 14-inch perch, and I was
oh,
like. I can't eat fish. I knifed him for him,
Yep.
but I just remember, like, we took a little hour-long break and caught, you know, the kind of quality of perch that people would travel a long ways to
Yep.
catch. And it was just sort of a accidental thing. And I think about, like, I don't focus on walleyes very often. I catch a ton of walleyes fishing the river, and they're
Mhm.
often really good ones. And,
Yep.
I mean, just think about, like, it's just a good fishery. When I was growing up, we fished a lot of northern pike. Like, I like big pike.
Yep.
They're hard to find. Like, they're just you can find a lot of lakes that have northern pike in them. You can find a lot of places that have northern pike, and a lot of them are just hammer handle fest, right? Like, they're just
Yep.
tiny. It's very hard to find like a 36, 38, 40-inch fish, right? Like where you're getting pretty good. The Mississippi, like, you can find that in a way that's just special. You can
Yeah.
find them where they spawn in those little cuts, and they'll wait around in there while the suckers and sunfish and all kinds of fish move in there for them to eat. And then they'll back out to some sand drop, and they'll be stacked on there. And you're like, this is like maybe not remote Canada level, but definitely way better than a lot of the stuff you'll find.
Totally. Dude, they get spooky too, and you start
Right.
fishing some of those tributary streams, and, like, we were probably a couple weeks late for it now, but, dude, I remember fishing one down in Illinois last year that all I could see was just the top, like, 3 inches of just an orange, leathery, like, thick old tail, and I just kept seeing this thing pop up, and then it would go back down. It was just kinda going back and forth like a shark below this dam, and I finally pitched a fly in there, and that sucker just about ripped my rod out of my hand to a point where I was like, "That was not like just a little 24-inch pike." Like,
Right.
holy smokes, that thing had some beef behind it. So,
They're so
yeah,
fun.
dude, it's insane. Absolutely insane. But, well, dude, we're coming up over well, we are over an hour now. I wanna be respectful of your time here and all that. But, dude, what do you got lined up coming down the pipe for, this summer and, coming up this fall?
I have 3 fishing shows I have to film in June.
Hell
They're gonna
yeah.
be all kind of interesting. One of them will be on the Mississippi, uh,
Nice.
and then a couple of public land hunts planned for this fall that I've always wanted to do that I'm filming for Meat Eater. Um, and so I have a lot of fun stuff coming up.
Hell yeah.
I'm gonna go fish smallies, I'm gonna go fish largemouth, I'm gonna fish muskies, I'm gonna fish a bunch of stuff, and then I'm gonna switch over and I'm gonna start working on a couple of, public land whitetail hunts that I've thought about a long time, and I've never done them, and I'm just gonna do them, and it's gonna be a lot of work and a lot of bugs and a lot of bullshit, but it's also gonna be
Mhm.
awesome.
Totally. Dude, that's awesome. Well, I can't wait to see all that stuff come out here, as it, gets underway and everything, and wish you luck in that. But, dude, thanks a ton for making time to come on the show, dude. I always enjoy chatting with you, and, yeah, good luck at the start of the summer and with all the stuff coming up this year, man. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks, buddy.